ancient epic, the assassination of philosophy. Topic: why did they really kill Socrates? An analysis of the trial of justice and hatred. In 399 BC, in Athens, the birthplace of democracy, a 70-year-old man was charged with treason and blasphemy. His name was Socrates. He was not an armed rebel, nor a tyrant, but a philosopher. His crime? Asking questions. The entire trial lasted only 1 day, concluding with Socrates' condemnation to death. This was not a victory for justice. This was the final defense mechanism of a city drowning in chaos and suspicion. We will not view this trial through a romantic lens. We will investigate it as a political case, where truth and logic were smothered by collective arrogance and personal fear. Why did Athens, the city that birthed intellectual freedom, feel compelled to kill its wisest man? If you want to explore the fatal weaknesses of democracy when it turns against reason, and deeply analyze the trial that changed Western history, hit subscribe and turn on notifications immediately. The Ancient Epic community will take you behind the scenes of this tragic moment. Setting the context. Athens in its death throes. Socrates' trial was the direct result of Athens' collapse in the Peloponnesian War. The city was economically devastated, politically humiliated, and morally divided. Athens needed an explanation for its failure, and they needed a target for their anger. In this environment, suspicion of intellectuals and thinkers skyrocketed. Anyone who challenged tradition or promoted individual thought was deemed harmful. Socrates, who had dedicated his life to doing exactly that, was the ideal candidate for the role of the scapegoat. Part 1. The 3 layers of accusation, the enemy in the shadows. The charges on paper, formal and hollow. 3 men brought the official indictment against Socrates: Meletus, a poet; Anytus, a wealthy tanner, craftsman; and Lycon, an orator. They presented 2 charges: impiety, not worshipping the city's gods and introducing new deities, the daimonian; corrupting the youth, encouraging young people to question authority and tradition. Analysis of the danger level. This indictment was cunning. After the Peloponnesian War, Athens restored democracy but imposed a strict law against those attempting to overthrow the regime. Since they couldn't charge Socrates directly with treason, his opponents used religion and morality to achieve a political end. The real charge: the 30 tyrants connection. Socrates' most dangerous association was with the men who ravaged the democracy, the 30 tyrants. 2 key figures in this group, Critias and Charmides, were once close students of Socrates. Although Socrates publicly criticized their brutality, the fact that his close associates became the city's destroyers created a compelling reason to indict him, educating the betrayers. Anytus, who played a major role in restoring democracy, harbored deep personal resentment. He wanted to eradicate any remaining influence of the oligarchy, and Socrates was the final symbol. The philosophical charge: humiliation. Socrates' deepest crime was intellectual resentment. The Socratic method, elenchus, was a weapon. He approached the self-proclaimed wisest men in Athens, politicians, poets, artisans, and, by asking simple questions, he exposed their actual ignorance regarding concepts of morality and justice. He turned the search for truth into a public joke. These publicly humiliated men, who possessed prestige and power, were now the jurors casting votes in his trial. Part 2. The Apology and the Test of Reason. The Democratic Courtroom. The trial was held before a jury of 501 jurors, a purely democratic form. The decision was made by a simple majority vote. The Apology. No repentance. Socrates' speech, recorded by Plato in the Apology, is a powerful declaration of principle, not a plea for mercy. He is a divine gift. Socrates asserted that his work was a divine mission, entrusted by the god Apollo to awaken Athens. He did not apologize. He affirmed that he was doing the greatest good for the city. The challenge. He challenged the jury, "If you kill me, you will not harm me, but you will harm yourselves. For you will never find another person like me, who dedicated everything to the service of the city." The first vote. Socrates was convicted by a very narrow margin, only 60 votes. This indicates that a significant number of jurors were persuaded that he was innocent. The death sentence choice. According to Athenian law, after conviction, both the prosecution and the defendant proposed a penalty. The prosecution proposed the death penalty. Socrates, again, refused to play the game. He did not propose exile or a fine, as that would imply admitting guilt. Instead, he made a declaration. He deserved to be sustained at public expense for the rest of his life in the Prytaneum, an honor reserved for outstanding citizens. This action, though deeply ironic, was perceived by the masses as ultimate arrogance. Socrates' arrogance was his final weapon. His act of defiance before the jury transformed a court of justice into a confrontation between reason and emotion. If you find this content valuable, a click of your subscribe button will help Ancient Epic continue to shed light on these profound mysteries. The final vote. Socrates' defiance backfired. Many jurors who initially voted for acquittal now switched their vote to the death penalty. Deeply offended by his proposal, Socrates was condemned to death by a much larger majority than the initial vote. Athens chose emotion over reason. Part 3. The student's reaction and the price of justice. Plato and the disillusionment. One of the most profoundly affected witnesses was Plato. Socrates' death was the greatest shock of Plato's life. It fundamentally changed his view of democracy. Plato concluded that pure democracy cannot function, as it is easily swayed by demagogues and ultimately kills the best and wisest men. Plato left Athens, later returning to found the Academy, a community dedicated to reason and truth. Separated from the political chaos of the city. Phaedo and Crito, the final moments. Socrates was not killed immediately. He had to wait 30 days for the sacred ship to return. This was the window for Crito to execute the escape plan. Socrates' refusal to escape is the climax of the entire story, analyzed in Crito. Socrates believed in the supremacy of law. He had accepted its dominion throughout his life. Breaking the law to save himself would be an act of hypocrisy and destruction of the city's foundations. I cannot teach others to obey the law, and then break the law myself. Socrates accepted an unjust death to protect the principle he had lived and taught by. Part 4. Legacy and long-term consequences. The art of dying. Socrates drank the hemlock calmly, continuing to discuss the immortality of the soul until the final moment. He transformed the physical death into a philosophical victory, proving that the soul and reason are not bound by physical demise. His final words about owing a rooster to Asclepius, the god of healing, were a declaration that death was the final release and healing from the disease of life. The sanctity of justice. Athens' regret came too late. After Socrates' death, the public quickly realized its mistake. His accusers faced public outrage and were exiled or executed. The tragic conclusion. Athens restored democracy, but they killed their own philosophical conscience. They chose temporary peace by sacrificing eternal truth. Socrates' death became a cautionary legend, a testament that the power of the state, even in the name of democracy, can become a tool of destruction when it refuses to confront uncomfortable truth. Socrates was not a religious martyr, he was a martyr of reason. This trial is a black hole in the history of democracy. Could Athens have saved Socrates and still preserved the rule of law? And would you, as a juror, have been swayed by his arrogance? Comment below, share your thoughts, and join this great historical and philosophical debate with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the Ancient Epic channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our deep analyses of humanity's greatest legacies. See you in the next epic.
Ancient Epic, the final declaration of Socrates. Topic: The black hole of Greek philosophy. Why Socrates accepted death and hemlock. An old man, barefoot, he was not a general, nor a politician, yet he was the greatest threat to Athens. When condemned to death, he chose to stay. He had a golden opportunity to escape. Everything was arranged, yet he resolutely drank the hemlock poison. This was no personal tragedy. This was the founding act of Western philosophy. Why did Socrates accept death? Because he believed that the destruction of the law was worse than the destruction of himself. We will not just tell the story. We will join Socrates in answering the greatest question. Does a citizen have an obligation to obey an unjust law? If you want to uncover the truth behind the most controversial death in philosophical history, and dissect the ultimate conflict between the individual and the state, hit subscribe and turn on notifications immediately. The Ancient Epic community will take you inside the trial of Socrates. Athens in the shadows. To understand Socrates' death, we must understand the chaos of Athens. The city had just lost the Peloponnesian War, losing its empire and suffering humiliation. Democratic pride had been replaced by suspicion and despair. The system of values had collapsed. During this period, a Spartan-backed oligarchy was installed, known as the 30 Tyrants. Although democracy was restored, the fear and the need to find a scapegoat for the nation's failures were immense. Socrates, due to his personal association with some of the tyrants, like Critias, became the perfect target for historical cleansing. Part 1. The real charges and the intellectual fury. The most controversial profession. Socrates was a street philosopher. He did not lecture, he questioned. The Socratic method was a chain of relentless logical inquiry, aimed at leading the interlocutor to realize their own ignorance. He publicly humiliated politicians, poets, and the sophist rhetoricians, those who made a living teaching eloquent persuasion. Analysis of corrupting the youth. In reality, this was the charge of corrupting belief. The Athenian youth, disgusted by the lies of the previous generation, who led them to war and defeat, found in Socrates an authentic voice. This naturally undermined the authority of the elders. Analysis of impiety. Socrates believed in an internal, divine voice, daimonion, a personal moral compass. This was viewed as a direct threat to state religion, which was a tool of social control. Socrates was placing individual conscience above collective worship. The apology, choosing confrontation. At the trial, Socrates refused to fight. A fearful man. He did not refute the charges, he affirmed his mission. He declared himself to be the gift of the gods to Athens, and that his work was more important than any military victory. He compared himself to the gadfly, whose job was to sting a large, sluggish horse, the city of Athens, to keep it awake and working. He famously stated, "If you kill me, you will not easily find another like me." When convicted, Socrates was asked to propose an alternative punishment. He did not suggest exile or a fine. He proposed that he be given a public dinner in the Prytaneum, an honor reserved for Olympic victors. This act was not arrogance, it was a moral statement forcing the jury to confront the absurdity and injustice of their verdict. Part 2. The social contract, the supreme love for Athens. The law's grace period. After his conviction, Socrates was not executed immediately. He was allowed to live for 30 days while a sacred ship returned from Delos. During this time, the opportunity for escape arose. Orchestrated by Crito, his wealthiest student and friend, Crito had arranged everything. The bribes were ready, and the escape route to Thessaly was secured. All Socrates needed to do was walk out of the prison. Crito's argument. Crito worried about his own reputation. He would be seen as stingy for not saving his friend. And the loss to the students, they would lose their great teacher. He appealed to Socrates to live for his children. The extraordinary choice in Crito. This is the philosophical climax. Socrates refuted all of Crito's arguments by using the very laws of Athens as his dialogue partner. Socrates asked, "If I escape, who will I harm?" And he answered, "I will harm the very laws themselves." He presented these unshakable arguments. The unconditional tacit agreement. He had lived 70 years in Athens. He was free to leave anytime if he disliked the laws. But he chose to stay, marry, and raise children under the law's protection. By staying, he had implicitly signed a binding contract with the city. The destruction of the system. Can a city continue to exist if its legal judgments are rendered ineffective, nullified, and destroyed by individuals? If he escaped because the verdict was unjust, then any citizen could escape. His action would shatter the foundation of Athens. Immutable justice. Socrates argued that the mistake of the law, his conviction, does not grant him permission to commit a new mistake, escaping and violating the law. One wrong cannot be cured by another wrong. For Socrates, escaping was the easy choice, but it was the destruction of his life's philosophy. He was not just fighting for justice, he was fighting for the sanctity of the rule of law. Part 3. The ultimate death and the luminous legacy. The final hour. The day of execution arrived. Students gathered for the last time. There was no panic. Socrates spent his final hours discussing the immortality of the soul, as recorded in Phaedo. He sought to prove by deed that death was merely the soul's release from the physical body. Even when facing the most physically harrowing moment, he prioritized the pursuit of truth. When the prison attendant, who was used to witnessing tragic deaths, handed him the cup of poison. The attendant wept. Socrates offered him words of comfort. The moment of drinking the poison, he drank the hemlock calmly, almost indifferently, like drinking a cup of wine. As the poison began to paralyze his body from the feet upwards, his students broke down in tears. Socrates admonished them, reminding them that a man must die in peace. Analysis. This act was the victory of reason over emotion, the core principle of Greek philosophy. He transformed the most physically brutal moment into a philosophical lesson. The last words and the healing. Socrates' final words were a quiet instruction to Crito. Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Please, don't forget to pay the debt. Asclepius is the god of healing. Socrates' implication was, death is the final healing from the illness of physical life. His soul was finally freed. The enduring legacy, unmuzzled truth. Socrates left no written word, but his death created a library. The genesis of Plato. Plato, his greatest student, was shocked, abandoned politics, and returned to write his great works, creating the academy and defining the entirety of Western thought. Socrates' death was the first brick in the construction of Western philosophy. The eternal challenge. His death poses a timeless question. Where does the citizen's duty lie when conscience conflicts with the law? Socrates was not silenced. By his death, he gave humanity a voice of conscience stronger than any call to escape. He accepted human error to preserve a greater, divine principle. Socrates' death is one of history's greatest moral decisions. He accepted human error to preserve a greater principle. Do you believe Socrates was right? Or was loyalty to a flawed state an act of self-destruction? Comment below, share your thoughts, and join this great philosophical debate with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the Ancient Epic channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our deep analyses of humanity's greatest legacies. See you in the next epic. Ancient Epic, The Curse of Pharos. Continuation. After the segment, the lighthouse was more than just a light. It was a symbol of intellect and the control of nature during the Hellenistic age. Superior engineering and light technology extended. The geotechnical challenge, rising high on a sandy isle. To build a structure over 300 feet tall on a small island, subjected to wave forces and earthquakes. The engineers under the Ptolemies had to push the limits of ancient physics. The architect Socrates of Cnidus built it not on the mainland, but on the island of Pharos itself, which protected the harbor entrance. This choice of location was strategic, but also a formidable engineering challenge. The foundation had to be constructed robustly to contend with the salty marine environment and the weak, sandy soil. They utilized massive blocks of limestone and granite, reinforcing them with molten lead, an anti-seismic technique far more advanced than using mere mortar. Analysis of height. Try to imagine this: 130 meters, 425 feet. That is the height equivalent of a modern skyscraper. It far surpassed every contemporary maritime structure. This sheer scale required a logistical and crane system that we can only speculate about. But it must have relied on the mechanical principles developed by Archimedes, a contemporary figure. The three-tier structure, the engineering system. Socrates divided the lighthouse into three sections not just for aesthetics, but for mechanical stability. The base tier, square, the largest, bottom section, whose function was to anchor the entire structure to the ground and withstand the strongest storms. Inside were quarters for guards, engineers, and a spiral ramp or mechanical elevator system for transporting fuel. The middle tier, octagonal, this intermediate structure served as a transition, reducing the surface area exposed to the wind while containing the internal staircase for ascent. This is where granite blocks were arranged in a load-reducing pattern. The lamp tier, circular, the summit containing the fire and, more importantly, the optical device. This is where Greek intellect shone. The secret of focused light. How could the small fire at the top of the tower project light so far? This is evidence that the Greeks understood reflective optics. They did not use glass, as it was not yet refined enough, but massive, superbly polished metal mirrors, possibly bronze or silver-plated copper. These mirrors were arranged in a parabolic or hyperbolic shape to collect and converge the light from the fire, then reflected as a powerful, directional beam. This turned the lighthouse into a gigantic, inverted light telescope, multiplying the light intensity far beyond that of a raw fire source. The fire was not just burning, it was controlled.
A spiral ramp or mechanical elevator system for transporting fuel. The middle tier, octagonal, this intermediate structure served as a transition, reducing the surface area exposed to the wind while containing the internal staircase for ascent. This is where granite blocks were arranged in a load-reducing pattern. The lamp tier, circular, the summit containing the fire and, more importantly, the optical device. This is where Greek intellect shone. The secret of focused light. How could the small fire at the top of the tower project light so far? This is evidence that the Greeks understood reflective optics. They did not use glass, as it was not yet refined enough, but massive, superbly polished metal mirrors, possibly bronze or silver-plated copper. These mirrors were arranged in a parabolic or hyperbolic shape to collect and converge the light from the fire, then reflected as a powerful, directional beam. This turned the lighthouse into a gigantic, inverted light telescope, multiplying the light intensity far beyond that of a raw fire source. The fire was not just burning, it was controlled.